Hi, everybody, and welcome to the new episode of the End of Celts Podcast. I hope you're all keeping well, who's listening, following, and watching. I'm joined again by John. How are you, John?
I'm great, Stephen. Thanks, mate. Yourself?
Well, great as can be after all the scenes in the weekend. I'm sure like at yourself, but we'll definitely get on to that. And I'm joined again by Anthony. So it's a big welcome back to Anthony, who was on one of our previous podcasts that went down a storm as well. How are you, Anthony?
Aye, doing okay, Stephen, as well as can be expected. And just delighted to be back on speaking to you guys.
Yeah, it's a great platform to come on to vent your frustrations. I mean, that's what this is for. But we'll move on. Before we get on to the major topics, we'll move on to the game itself against Dundee United at Kennedys. Now, what we saw was Celtic basically just surrender in the league and got out with a whimper. I know in the first half we had 22 shots, something like that, but I mean, most of them were down the keeper's neck. We could have sat in goals ourselves and had a picnic and saved them. I just think, for me, that kind of just underpinned that everything was wrong with this season. The players at the end didn't even look bothered, or they didn't look emotional. I mean, there was no player you could even point out that looked emotional towards the end. It was just kind of an acceptance that the title's gone. I'll throw to you, Anthony, first. I'm interested to hear your views on the game, but what did you think of it?
Yeah, well, obviously, on the game itself, Stephen, absolute. You know, much was made about the fact that we had lion's share of possession again. God knows how many shots at goal. I think it was in the high 20s it finished up, and quite a fair few of them on target. But again, not really any of them tested Segrist. I mean, we were actually saying at the time, keeper's having another great game against us. When you actually watch the game back, all of these saves are they're very routine. There's no worldy save in there. There's no Gorham-esque kind of save at any point. And really, apart from it, it's just the same old story. It's almost a copy and paste job of all the other match reports we've done. Lacklustre, very toothless up front, and it was a performance that really summed up the season. If there was ever a way to sum it up, it was just watch that 90 minutes back. If there's one little light that you can say, it was great to see James Forrest back on the pitch. Obviously, nowhere near match fit, so he didn't really get much of an impact. But I think he's come in for a lot of criticism for supporters over the years, myself included. You know, I've had more than a few moans at him on the byline, but I tell you, we've certainly missed him this year. So it was good to have him back. Apart from that, it was just another awful day at the office.
Yeah, it was just another bog standard version of all the games we've seen, especially at the turn of the year anyway, even before that, stretching way back to the European games. It's just been, it seems like from the start of the season, Celtic have hung out the white flag and just waited Rangers winning the title. And as you said there, it's a copy and paste job. You're 100% correct. You think when Lennon left, Kennedy may come in and implement some new ideas, or it's just the same diamond. I mean, Forrest, come on, yeah, it's fantastic to see him back. But the first position he took up was in the number 10 row. He's a winger. Get him out in the wing, get him challenging their fullback. That's what we've missed all season. But again, the lack of knowledge from the coaching staff. And I think Forrest drifted towards the end of the game, but I think that was off his own bat. He wasn't told to do that. It wasn't any tactical advice to him. It was just basically go on and see what you can do. But John, what do you think of the game itself?
Yeah, just to agree with the points that Anthony made there. It's a cut and paste job. Any other time we've been asked about the games, they're pretty lacklustre. And again, you can dominate in possessions all fine and well, but when you need to do something with it. And like he says, I think 99% of the shots on target were right down Segrist's throat. So we never really challenged them. Obviously couldn't find that goal. And that's been one of the biggest issues this season, because we dominate possession for every game we play. I don't think there's ever been a game where we've actually been on the back foot, other than against them, I think, earlier in the season. But it's just been, if you wanted to sum up the season, that Dundee United game was a perfect example of just how their seasons went.
Yeah, I mean, the way you look at it from our point of view as well, if you seen during the season they were trying the raw and there was a couple of points in it, you maybe think to yourself, look, it's one of them seasons that just didn't go our way. But the fact is, it's early March and we've lost the league title. I've seen a stat the other day. I think it's the earliest the league title has been lost since the 1900s. I think I'm correct in saying that. I mean, it's just beyond a joke. And trying to move on from that in terms of the league. John Kennedy himself, I thought that he would come in, even though I don't want him as manager, and maybe change it back to something more familiar, like a 4-2-3-1. Try and get a bit of width in the team. If that means playing Christie on the right, so be it. But it's just about trying to get people out there and attacking their fullback. In terms of John Kennedy's audition, so to speak, Anthony, do you think that's all but over for him now? There's no hope?
Yeah, well, I certainly hope so. If there's something, maybe apart from James Forrest, something you can take to the game is that it hopefully puts the absolutely terrifying idea of John Kennedy being the Celtic manager full-time next season to bed, because believe me, there would have been people in that boardroom considering it, especially if, going back to talking on Friday night, I was listening in to you guys when Ross was sort of explaining the scenario if Celtic were to go on a bit of a run and perhaps at the end it lift the Scottish Cup, would they go down that narrative again of, this, answering the call nonsense? John Kennedy is as fit to be Celtic manager as I am to run the Tories. It's just absolutely, it's a terrible, terrible idea. I don't, the guy's, he's done well. He had obviously the horrific injury that ended his career short, and the club have stood by him, and he's by all accounts done well. He had his ambassador role, then he's helped out with coaching, but you can't just be handing out the top job on a charity basis. He's part of the problems at Celtic, not the solution. His tactical substitute. I agree that the actual setup at the start, 3 strikers on the bench, in a game we needed to win just to try and keep the league from not being mathematically over was ridiculous. His substitutions, I mean Turnbull's face said it all, really, didn't it? When he got taken off, he was the only one really kind of affecting the play. It's just absolutely, I couldn't believe it when I seen it happening. And then after the game as well, his post-match conference was just, if you didn't know, you could have swore it was, he was reading off a teleprompter directed by Peter Lawwell. Basically, it's not a time for big change and stuff like that. The time for big change at Celtic Park has never been more ready than now. There is in no way, shape or form can John Kennedy or Gavin Strachan, for that matter, be in any way involved from the summer onwards at the very latest.
Yeah, the subs for me were baffling, Anthony. As you said, when I seen Turnbull coming off, leaving Scott Brown in the pitch, you could even took Scott Brown off then and threw on Turmrodzic. It would have been the same effect. And Turnbull, for me, as you said, he's probably him and Sorrow, even though Sorrow's not getting the game at the moment for some reason. But they've been like the bright sparks of the last couple of months for Celtic. And you've seen Turnbull's face. He's almost being like, what the hell is going on? And you're right, he's the only one that does forward passes. Every one of our other players tend to play sideways or back and not affecting the play. And leaving the free strikers on the bench, for me, I would have started Kamala or Yeti or Griffiths if he was match fit, because you need strikers on the pitch, and we all know Odson Edward on his day is a fantastic player, and he's the best player in the SPL by head and shoulders by miles. But when he starts doing them tippy tappy, trying to play in between lines in the box, it never really works. And there was a couple of opportunities when he got in the box and he could have passed the ball. He tried to take on the player and it got took off him, and that for me does signals that it's all about an individual side of thing from Celtic now. It's not a team collective. It's a bunch of individuals playing in a green and white shirt who really don't want to be there, maybe apart from a handful of players. What about you? What's your view on that, John? Would you tend to agree with the whole Kennedy thing is gone and the players just need to go who don't want to be there?
Absolutely. I've been vocal about it since we started the podcast. Since Kennedy got the role as well. He's not the man for the job. He's completely void any ideas. It looks like he's just continuing on with the same sort of tactics that Lennon was playing, which weren't working. There's been no fresh sort of ideas. And like you say, Forrest coming in obviously is a highlight, but he's not match fit. He was played out of position. You're taking the best player on the day off the park, and it's just showing you complete. It's difficult watching it as a fan when it's like we as fans cannot see it, and this is a guy who's been in and around that club now for years. It's like, what are these guys not getting? Like, what is it he's not seeing, or what is he seeing that we're not? All these players playing out of position, still sticking with the same tactics when all season it's not been working for us. And I mean that not just the result, but the fact that he's not done anything different, and the fact that it's just been again a cut and paste Joby Lennon's tactics and his lineups and everything else is proof that he's not the man for the job. For me.
Yeah,
and I want to just touch on as well. Forrest, as I say, it's great. I'm coming back. Obviously, with the ankle surgery that he had, but bringing him back. I mean, I don't know how long he's been in training for, and putting him on for the last 10 minutes or so of the game, where he's not really going to have too much of an impact. But did you see the state of the pitch?
No,
that's how injuries happen, man. And I said this in the group chat and that as well, but I was like, see, if you're going to be playing top flight football, it's like these clubs need to get their act together. The local pitches here, public pitches, are in better nick.
Yeah, but
and it's ridiculous.
To be honest with you, John, I know what you're saying, but I just can't buy that as an excuse.
I'm not saying it's an excuse, but I'm talking about, like, in terms of injury. Like, you've just had a boy who's been out all season with an ankle injury. He's just come back for surgery, and you're putting him on a pitch that's in that kind of state. Pitches like that and in that sort of condition can cause injuries, and
it was kind of like
a risk.
It was kind of like a throwback. Do you remember when Motherwell had the sand all over the pitch? That's what it looked like to me. There was just sand everywhere. But I know I 100% agree with what you're saying in terms of Forrest coming back into that game. Maybe it wasn't suited for him because obviously the state of the pitch. But the way I look at it, the footballers who are fit all season, they should be able to play in any surface, any type of weather conditions.
Oh, definitely. I'm not saying the pitch is an excuse for us playing poorly.
No, 100%.
Yeah, it's just
I
it
get what you
baffles
mean.
me that a top flight club, are allowing footballers to play in those conditions.
Yeah, it's like the whole debate around the 4G pitches. I mean, there's 4G pitches in my Valley Leisure Centre, but you wouldn't use them for top flight football, but they use them in the SPL. It baffles me too. Like, but I do think that I just think that the players, no matter what the pitch is in, no matter what weather it is, just put on that shirt and give your all and try your best. That's all us fans want. And you look at it, and the players there. I mean, Ryan Christie for one, and I've said it before about him, but his head is huge. It's massive. He thinks he's like Lionel Messi. He tries things that don't come off, and he still keeps doing it. And it's like, just mate, give up sometimes, man. Just pass the ball to someone else. And it's the same with probably half the players in that team. And what bothers me the most as well, see, after that game, Anthony, it was a perfect time for the club to say, you know what, grab the bull by the horns here. Let's get this new manager sorted. Let's make an announcement to the fans that we're bringing in someone new at the end of the season. But again, the silence, excuse what this has been said loads of times, but the silence has been deafening from Celtic Park. What do you think about that, Anthony?
It absolutely has been. But that's just run of the mill where the guys that run our club are concerned. With regards to the new manager, absolutely, we there definitely has to be a change. The only way I would think of that they perhaps haven't said anything so far is perhaps the person that they have in mind is maybe already still in employment with somewhere else. So obviously that the kind of red tape around that would prevent us from making any sort of public statement. But like you say, there's no reason why they can't make an announcement now to say, that there will be a change, rather than this sort of, we're all speaking in hushed tones. Do you think they actually might give it to Kennedy? Because there will definitely be people in the corridors of power that will have been thinking it. After how awful this season has been, there are people up there so out of touch that they would brass neck that. I mean, it's scary to think John Kennedy has more experience and has more experience for the job than what Neil Lennon did 10 years ago when he got the job on a full-time basis. You can argue whether or not he's became a success. I think sometimes we romanticise some of Neil's achievements a wee bit, but but certainly as a player, he'll always have a place in our hearts for him. But in terms of if it was possible to get, if the number one candidate out there isn't in a job at the moment, I don't see why it isn't being done just now. but if he's still in employment, then obviously, we have to kind of make do with Kennedy for a while. Yeah, I suppose it's a bit like, the Flying Dutchman in Pirates of the Caribbean. Into the captain, it must have a captain. The ship has got to be ran by somebody. I would prefer it to be a competent person, but unfortunately for the moment, we're stuck with Kennedy. But the new manager that comes in, really, obviously you're never going to get 100. But I mean, even when Brendan came in, or when Martin O'Neill came in, it wasn't met with 100%, universal approval. You're never going to get every single person get happy with it. But the guy, when he comes in, he really has to be one of the sort of the choices near the top of the list, because he has to kind of unify the support a bit, because everyone's just been sort of blown from pillar to post this season, just with the performances and just the amateurish way that the club's been presented on social media and everything. We just need something to kind of calm the waters a bit, and somebody that will at least unify the vast majority of the support.
Yeah. Well, what do you think, John, about that?
I absolutely 100% agree with everything that you said, Anthony. Like you say, the silence has been deafening. I firmly believe that if they have got someone in place and they're unable to do it through announce it through red tape, at least come out and say there's a guy there, or there is going to be changes next season. And you're hoping it is somebody at the top of the list, and it's no some of the other names that have been floated about. Other project names that have not got experience and stuff like that. It needs to be a competent and experienced guy that's coming in. And that says, I think we've all repeatedly spoke about it now over the past couple of weeks, who our ideal targets are, personally. And you're hearing, it's still constant, it's just a rumour mill's just churning out every name under the sun. I even heard one about John Collins becoming director of football, and it's stuff like that absolutely baffles me. And you got to wonder where these articles are coming from, where these stories are coming from, and it's a concern, because it's stuff like that causes divide and discontent amongst the fans and stuff like that, because you start then saying, well, what the hell is actually going on? And like Anthony says, the club is so out of touch with the fans, and they need to do something quickly, and they need to do something major in order to appease the majority of the fan base and to get them united again, because as it stands at the minute, it does look amateurish, and it's sad to see, really.
Well, for me, whoever's coming in, and we've said it before, has a major job, but the weekend there against Dundee just proves how big a job this really is going to be. I think it's important, this new manager coming in. I'll touch upon the latest rumours that's floating about as well, but I think it's important that they get the reserve team playing the way the first team plays, because then that creates a pathway, and they're also familiar with the tactics when they move the first team football. For years and years now, the reserve team, developmental squad, whatever you want to call it, seems to be just left in the lurch to play a few games here and there against like Bolton, Fulham development sides, and you never really hear of them again. I really think the youth academy is going to be important going forward, and I really hope they're focused on that as well. But in terms, as you said, John Collins is the latest rumour of director of football, and he actually publicly said it as well on TV, I believe. And I just think he's just touting himself for a job. He needs more money to buy hair products or something. He shouldn't be anywhere near Celtic Park, no chance after the last time of Ronnie Dyla. But the way I'm looking at it now, and I put it on Instagram last night, an Italian journalist said that Enzo Marchese, if I'm saying his name right, is the favourite, or Celtic's number one, to get the job. Now, Anthony, you look at that name and you don't have a clue who he is unless you Google search him. He's played for Juventus. He's played top football. He was assistant to Pellegrini before Pellegrini left West Ham, of course, and then he joined with Pep at Man City to be their under-23 coach or manager. Does that excite you in any way, or do you think that's a totally wrong decision if that happens?
Yeah, well, I mean, I must admit, you've actually gave me a crash course in his career there, Stephen. I knew that he was at City, but I didn't know all his previous. Wouldn't be against him coming in some sort of perhaps being part of the coaching setup. He's clearly got credentials there. Would he be my first choice? No, absolutely not. I know that one of Pep's apprentices went on to manage at Arsenal and Mikel Arteta. But the greatest, we're not Arsenal. We're a big club. We're kind of we're sort of but we're around. We're designed around winning titles and trophies regularly. Arsenal is a big fancy project in the north of London. No one, when Arteta got that job, thought, Arsenal are going to start competing for titles now, because that's just not where they are. Celtic needs to have an experienced manager in, and if possible, who is used to winning, or at least with the right tools could make winning a habit. I think I'm really done with projects and develop, things like that. I actually didn't mind Ronnie Dyler, although it kind of ended in sort of bad circumstances. But the time's not right for a guy on a stepping stone, as it were. We need somebody in that's he doesn't need to show us his credentials. We already know them, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean. In terms of your first choice, Anthony, me and John have said ours countless times. Who's yours? Because I haven't heard yours yet.
I must admit, if it was up to me, I would go for Eddie Howe as well. If the genie was allowed to give me 3 wishes, I would have Howe as my first choice. And I can understand some of the reasons why maybe folk weren't against him. Ross actually made some very good points about Sean Dyche. I genuinely hadn't thought of him at all. But yeah, I think Howe kind of fits the bill. He's a young guy. He's with a lot of experience. I know that there is the thing that, of course, he's technically not won anything, but how many trophies are you expected to win at Bournemouth? And there is perhaps the risk that Bournemouth was his club, and maybe the same way that Celtics is Neil's. Maybe he is just perfect for that one club. But I think when you look at the way he plays the game, the way he speaks, I could quite easily see him on the touchline at Celtic Park, or even on the unveiling day. I think he would be one of these sort of unifying candidates that would get everyone excited again. We're all obviously excited to get back to the football. In any case, once this pandemic does one, but by the same point, we don't want to be going, that you do still hear the rumours of, Jack Ross, Steve Clarke, and fair play to Steve Clarke, he's done wonders with Scotland, but I do sometimes think that this penalty shootout win has sort of canonised his legend a wee bit. There's no doubt he can organise a defence, and that's all well and good. I don't personally, I wouldn't have him for Celtic. And like you say, John's bang on the money with the rumour mill. I think I was linked with the job yesterday. Unfortunately, but I'm not ruling myself out. I just don't know if I'll make the interview. But yeah, everyone's been going to get sort of attached to it, and especially if John Collins, like you say, if he's even flaunting it publicly, it's just clickbait jobs for the guys at the Daily Record and the Scottish Sun to just to print this, because they know it'll a wee bump in sales. I must admit, out with Eddie Howe and maybe one or two others, though, there's not really anyone on that list of the sort of bookies' favourites, as it were, that really excites me. The only thing, and I actually said this to John on Sunday on the group chat, I says, am I perhaps reading too much into this? And he says, well, I hope you are. When they were doing the Super Sunday for the English games, and obviously Graham Souness got asked about about Rangers winning, and when it cut to Roy Keane, he basically sort of dismissed Rangers' achievements and says, Celtic will bounce back next year like all great clubs do. We are a mischievous kind of glint in the eye, and I thought, is he maybe? Am I reading too much into this, or is this am I looking at the next Celtic manager here?
For me, Anthony, I think that would be a totally wrong move. It's just another Neil Lennon. It's another motivator within coming into Celtic Park if that happens. But I think Roy Keane, yes, he's a legend within the game, world-renowned name. But management-wise, I mean, he managed Sunderland. I think he brought them up to the Premier League, fair enough. But other than that, he's done nothing. I think he's better staying as a pundit. That's where his best work. I
totally agree. And I think, don't get me wrong, he might make us feel better for 5 minutes going into that dressing room and telling some of the jokers, quite frankly, compared to some of the performances this year. A few home truths. It would maybe make us feel better for 5 minutes, but long term, he does. He's got that abrasiveness that Neil has, and players. That this generation of players don't tend not to react positively to those kind of that kind of approach, that kind of autocratic approach to management. Players you tend to find now react more to players that to managers that are a bit more open, a bit more arm round the shoulder sort of thing.
Definitely. And I agree with that, and that's why just to your point there, that's why I say I hope you're reading too much into it, because as you mentioned, Keane obviously is a legend in the game. He's a world-renowned name, but I don't think he's management-wise. He would be, like you said, he might light a fire under some of the players, but how long is that going to last? Because in the same vein, we know how hot-headed he is. We know his general attitude, and that isn't the kind of the person you want. You need a man manager, like you said, Anthony. Somebody who no coddle players, but like listen to them, coach them properly. If Keane was ever to come into Celtic, I would accept it as in like a coaching capacity.
Yeah.
But for management, no.
No, I think it just falls into the whole Celtic connection, Ireland connection. I think Celtic just need to get away from that for a moment. Look outside the box. Look out from within the whole Celtic family, so to speak. They need to be a bit more ambition, especially now to get the fans on side. I think it's important that this next appointment gets in as soon as possible. I mean, the more time drags on, John, I don't think Eddie Howe is going to be the next Celtic manager. If it was going to be that, what's holding it? Is he stuck in the M1 or M2, whatever it is up in Scotland? He should be up already, looking at the damn players, saying what he wants and what he needs for this rebuild coming up, because it's going to be huge. I had a list of players last week, and I think it was like 10 players in total that might be away or potentially leaving, and that's a massive rebuilding job on your hands. I think, for me personally, the sooner this season ends, it just has to end quickly. I mean, these games are just dead rubbers. So I know the Old Firm games or the Derby games are coming up, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, yes, it'll be nice to beat Rangers at Parkhead, but it doesn't mean anything, really, does it? It's been a terrible season. It wouldn't really surprise me if we get knocked out in the Scottish Cup as well, the way we're getting on. I just think they need to get us sorted as soon as possible. These players are in a rut. Most of them don't care. They don't even want to be there, and that's been quite known all season. There's a few players now starting lineup that just couldn't give two flyers, to be honest. And the likes of John Joe Kenny, he's only there to get fit. He played well the first few games, but he just fell into the whole rut that the Celtic team's in. He's passing the ball sideways, and not to pick on John Joe Kenny, but it's true, he's only there to get fit for Everton. The rest of the players, and go through the whole team, to be honest, Scott Bain, no chance that he's going to be our number one next season. I can't see it. It's just a major rebuilding job, and it's in fairness, the whole director of football thing for me as well, Anthony. It can be a two-pronged situation. What if you get a manager in who is strong-headed and doesn't want anyone over him? That might be an issue for any potential new manager coming in. But do you think it is vital for Celtic to get a director of football, or would you be happy enough with a manager who could deal with it all?
I think the way that Celtic is, I mean, it's not it's the greatest club in the world to us, and it is a massive football institution. There's no getting away from that, but we also have to be realistic and say, we're not Manchester United or Barcelona or Real Madrid. It's not. Yes, it's known worldwide, but it doesn't have its sort of tentacles in every corner of the globe, sort of thing. So the sort of demands of the club day to day are perhaps it maybe means that a director of football isn't an absolute essential part to running the football and operations. It's desirable, but it's maybe not essential. Like you say, if all that we need, if you're going to have a director of football, just have one, and just don't make him the chief executive. That's the problem. That's the two roles need to be separate, and that's where I always keep coming back to. When I know we'll probably discuss him more in a different episode maybe when he does go, but the whole point is that they say, you've got to judge Lowell over the business or his transfers. He goes, you actually can't separate the two, because he doesn't want to separate the two. He essentially puts his nose in where it's not required and ends up making an even bigger mess of things. And that's the problem with having someone being a director of football in a de facto type sense, but not having the skills to carry that job out. So I'm all for having a director of football. I don't think it's the be all and the end all that perhaps would be at a club like United. When you look at Manchester United, they're crying out for one. I don't necessarily think we are. I just think we need the chief executive to do the chief executive job and let the manager go on with the footballing side of things. If it means working with a head of recruitment, which again isn't a director of football, then that maybe then has to run a potential transfer target by the board or whatever, then that could work as well. But it's just all about Celtic historically always works best when everyone is singing for the same hymn sheet. And it was you look back when Steen took. I know it's all different generations, but you look when Steen took over, that was his first thing. He was in charge of the football. Same again when Martin took over, he was in charge of the footballing affairs. Even when Brendan took over in the first season, a lot of his sort of demands were met, but realistically, he wasn't coming in and asking to, go and take out half the Liverpool team. But the board and the manager and the players, they were all pulling in the same direction, and that's what brought the fans. That's what got the upper tier of the Lisbon Lions stand full again. Celtic supporters will react and react positively if they can see a vision, if they can see people with the credentials saying, we want what you want. We're going to do it in a sort of a way that won't put the club existentially at risk. But the problem at the moment is everyone's no singing for the same hymn sheet. I mean, they couldn't be singing for any sheets any further apart, quite frankly. And that's the biggest sort of single issue. It's not that you can have anybody in there as a director of football, but it's not a magic wand. What you just need is somebody that has a positive relationship with the chairman or the board that the players will respond to, which in turn usually would relate to good performances on the pitch and good results, and that makes us happy. We always seem to try and overcomplicate something that isn't actually that difficult, and history shows it. If you all work together, the results speak for themselves.
Yeah, no, I think that you put it perfect there, Anthony. You really did. And when the Celtic board show ambition, you're right, the Celtic fans backed the club to the hilt, and they've backed them this season. I mean, I think they sold out their season ticket allocation. The Celtic supporters are paying £600, £700 for the season tickets. That's not even including the premium customers who are paying over £1,000 for a season ticket. And they've repaid them with no communication, nothing for the fans, no information about what's happening next. When the season's gone up shit creek, so to speak, there's been no explanation why this has happened, why it's went downhill so quickly. And another thing I want to touch upon before we move on to the scenes we've seen at the weekend, which I'm really interested to hear both your points. But another thing for me is this season went down the pan so quickly, and you get these people saying, "Oh, look at you, you're entitled. One bad season, you're entitled. You think you can win everything. You think you should just turn up." That's not the point. As I said before in previous podcasts, if Celtic actually tried their hardest and went to every game without looking crap, to be honest, and just put 100% effort in, you could almost be like, yes, it wasn't our season, it wasn't our game, it just didn't fall for us. But it's the complete lack of effort, the lack of passion, the lack of desire that each and every single player at one point or another has showed this season. And that includes our club captain, Scott Brown, who got sent off in one of the games for a stupid elbow on a player who was nowhere near him. And I'm not afraid to say it, he's been a brilliant servant, but them type of players should be standing up for this season of all seasons. Likes of him, McGregor, Shane Duffy to a certain extent, because he comes from a Celtic background in terms of his family and where he comes from. And you look from within or from outside the club, and you just want an explanation why. You want the board to communicate. And they've left the fans so far behind that if they don't make the right appointment, and if they are whispering to themselves about John Kennedy, these sales, the season tickets will just plummet through the table, and the club will have no one else but to blame but themselves. John, what's your feeling before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, it goes back to other stuff that we've touched on previously. I just feel that the club needs a complete thing with top to bottom. Servants like Scott that have been great with the club, but it's time for him to move on. I'd love to see him remain at Celtic in a coaching capacity. But yeah, I mean, overall, we just need to look to the future, stop dwelling on the past, and then just get things over the line that needs to be done now instead of speculating about other stuff. We need to get the manager and everything else in place. I just want to touch briefly as well about the director of football thing. My understanding, I think there's just general confusion about what a director of football actually does in their role, and I think depending team to team it varies. Obviously, in our case, in recent years, Law's been a de facto director of football. He's been taking charge of certain aspects of the club that were out with his remit. There's no his original job title. He's a chief executive. He should have focused on the business end of things. But obviously he was sticking his nose in and he was bringing players into the club. And I don't know who he was working alongside, but it doesn't seem to be the manager. And getting these guys in. So, I mean, if we are planning on bringing a director of football in, then obviously the manager has to and this goes back to Anthony's point about singing for the hymn sheet, singing for the same hymn sheet. They need to be on the same wavelength. They need to have an understanding. The manager needs to be happy to be working with a director of football, and the director of football's job needs to be in black and white, what their role is, what it is they're going to be doing. My initial understanding was a director of football was acted as a sort of go-between between the manager and the board. If the manager wanted players brought in, obviously the director of football then worked to get those transfers over the line, and that was their responsibility, to allow the manager to just focus on managing the team. But primarily, manager had the final say on transfers and everything else. But yeah, no, it just comes down to if what is the director? Somebody just outline what their role is going to be at Celtic first and foremost. Let the fans know, whoever it is they bring in, what it is they're actually going to be doing. Because, like I says, I think it varies between club to club. I mean, you hear instances where director of footballs they take complete control of transfers, and managers might not like that. So we need to make sure that whoever we bring in, manager and director of football, if that is the route we're taking, that these guys are willing to work together and work in tandem. And there's no, because like you says, we as a club operate better, play better when everybody is working together and they've got the same goals and everything. So I think that needs to be paramount going forward.
John, sorry, Stephen, I just wanted to say, going back on that, what you were sort of outlining there, John, the sort of role of a director of football, and practically every sort of specific you mentioned there, it's very reminiscent of what Jock Brown's role was back in 97, 98. And it was under the title of general manager, and I can always remember it was one of the documentaries, and when he was explaining, he says, "I'm essentially in charge of all footballing operations, buying a player, selling a player, negotiating, all of that, except the coaching and picking the team." So that's and Janssen was very used to it. It's quite a Dutch thing that's very common over there. So this isn't a new idea.
No.
So it's definitely something that if the right people are in those positions, could work very well for Celtic.
Definitely, but what I was more referring to there, Anthony, just to your point, like with Janssen, he wanted Larsson in. We got that over the line.
Yep.
How much did he play in that transfer?
Yeah.
You see,
one back we get a fair bit. And I always think Jock Brown actually gets a lot more. He was a sort of pantomime villain. He actually, when you, and I always remember it in the documentary, he actually ran through a team that he played a part in a lot of the transfers. Obviously, Larsson, that was obviously the connection with him. But a lot of the players and negotiating, when you actually looked at the squad of players that he was involved in, like I say, he was obviously part of the broadcasting team, and and tensions were high at that point. So he's never revered very positively. But when you actually, in hindsight, he actually did quite a decent job at Celtic.
Yeah, I mean, and this is what again, just going back to the point I was making. It's all fine and well having a guy like that in the setup, and if you've got a manager there who's willing to work with him, then that's fantastic. But how much say does a manager have in who we are signing? Like, it's all right saying, he deals with the management of the team side of things, I deal with everything else. But, like, are you having a conversation with the manager? Is the manager recommending these are the kind of guys I want you to get through, get over the line for me, bring them in? Or is the director of football just saying, I think we need this? Because I don't think that works. And I think that the director of football, general manager, whatever it is, whatever title you want to give the guy, he needs to work in tandem with the manager. And I ultimately believe as the manager is the guy who is picking the team day in, day out. He's managing the team. He's in the coaching. He's seen it all firsthand. He knows what we need, and he should be the first protocol in terms of if he wants to strengthen and things like that. And then taking that to somebody in a position like that, and then saying, "Look, I've got a list of guys. We need this guy. Get in touch with them, see what we can do." And then that individual director of football, whatever, going and handling that, so that the manager can then just focus on going back to the team. That is my understanding of what that role is. And in that case, I don't see a problem with it. But if the director of football was turning around and saying, just you focus on the team, I'll decide what guys we're getting in, that's not going to work. And we've seen it at our club. We've had like Lennon said before with other guys, he doesn't know who these folk are. They're just getting brought into the club. Who's making these decisions? That is not the way forward, and that isn't the way the club should be run.
It's a recipe for disaster, really, that kind of approach. And
I believe that played its part.
And it's had disastrous consequences.
No, absolutely. And I think that was part of the reason why Rodgers wanted to get out.
Absolutely.
And we've seen in previous interviews as well, Lennon's turned around and says he doesn't know these names. And even this year, there's names getting floated about. He's been signed, it's getting released to the press. So-and-so signed, and then it's not what got over the line. And just scrimping our transfers, we could have got over the line, but no willing to pay the extra bit of money they were asking for, and then losing it. All that needs to end, and we need to. There just needs to be trust between the manager, whoever else is getting brought into whatever other roles, and everybody, as you say, Anthony, perfect way of putting it, sing for the same hymn sheet and make sure everybody's working together to take the club forward. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing. And these next few months and the lead up to next year is going to be very telling on how much this board are listening to fans, and B, actually care about the club itself. Because I mean, if they if they opt for the likes, say John Collins for a director of football and keep John Kennedy in as manager, that just shows you just how completely disconnected they are for the fans and the club itself. They don't care about anything other than lining their pockets, and it's despicable.
Yeah. Well, you look at it as well, John. I'm glad you actually touched upon signings. I've seen over the recent days, I put on Instagram last night as well, Celtic have apparently offered young striker Kyle Joseph a long-term deal from Wigan for a free transfer. Also the same with Liam Shaw from Sheffield Wednesday. You're almost wondering who's signing any players and who's giving 40 for this.
Exactly, a good point.
Yeah,
who is bringing? Who is doing this? Because if you're looking to bring a new manager in, you want a guy coming in with his own ideas, his own staff, and he wants to obviously have a look at the team and see what needs to be strengthened. If you're getting this information filtered through for somebody who's maybe in the job and the club aren't just letting us know about all this, then fine, fair enough. And try to get these guys out of the line. But is Law still involved in this? Is he still trying to bring them in? Are these Kennedys guys? Who's making these decisions?
You look at it as well. Go beyond the manager. You go beyond the director of football. Them positions have yet to be filled with the proper candidates. And I think the problem stretches as far back as a recruitment team. Nicky Hammond and I think it's Guy Spence or something anyway. He's like the chief scout. Their record at the moment is absolutely shambolic. And if they're continuing to sign players under the remit of the old management team, then as Anthony said, it's a recipe for disaster, because this new manager coming in needs to know, or needs to give his own remit for the scouting department to look for. And I think that the rebuild should go as far as the recruitment team. I think they should be all sacked or let go from their jobs. I don't like to see anyone being sacked. Let me put that out there. But being at a club like Celtic, you need to be producing good players, good quality players, and not the things we've seen this season. And yes, there has been people saying he's didn't complain about the transfer window, but this is all within at that moment. You're signing the likes of Shane Duffy, Ireland captain. You're signing Diego Laxalt, Uruguay international. You think these players are going to come in and do a fantastic job, but ultimately left field, and we're allowed to look back and criticise them. I mean, that's a part of football. Teams criticise fans criticise players all the time. It's accepted. It's allowed. I don't think there should be a problem with that. But this rebuild in the summer, touched upon it one more time, it's going to be massive. We need to know what's going to happen. We need to know what direction. And the season ticket sales are coming up soon, I'm pretty sure, in the next few weeks. And I just hope that they're going to release something pretty soon. No one said like they will, because they need to get the drive up for the tickets, and they'll probably use it as a PR stunt. And as Anthony alluded to, is it going to be John Kennedy answering your call again? I hope not. But look, we'll leave that behind us, lads, and we'll move on to the horrible scenes that was seen this weekend. Now, before I get into it, I just want to make clear, I'm not moaning, I'm not complaining, I'm not giving off. I just want to know why Celtic have been name-checked in government statements when it wasn't anything to do with us. Why were Celtic name-checked in the statement Rangers released about the incident when, again, it was nothing to do with us? What was seen was Rangers goading their own fans at the gates of Ibrox, celebrating with them like there was no pandemic. And again, at the training ground, they were celebrating with the fans, drinking alcohol, letting off fireworks and flares. They were egging on the fans. They wrecked up George Square. There was thousands of fans to see the aftermath of that. They wrecked the Celtic shop, smashed the windows. Over here where I live, they're in the Shankill, partying all night, partying all day. But apparently, according to our local news reporter, they were all in cars and in their own bubbles, which is a complete another shambles and a joke and a lie. And then you look at us. I know we touched upon it. The Dubai trip was totally wrong. It shouldn't have happened, because there's people who can't see family. There's people who can't go to funerals or weddings or anything at all like that. But a simple photo of Neil Lennon and Scott Brown was criticised to the hill by the government. It almost felt like at some point Celtic were just, I don't know, just being vilified by the government. And I was a believer that it was being equal until I seen everything that's happened over the last few months, and I've actually opened my eyes to the complete and utter biasm that I've seen, especially from governing media. I'll throw it to you, Anthony. I'm quite interested to hear your points on this. What's your take on this situation?
Well, the points you were making right at the very start there, Stephen, you know, why are Celtic getting mentioned in statements, particularly governmental ones? The other question you could say is, and why are we maintaining, and I wouldn't actually say a dignified silence, why are we sitting in the corner saying nothing and hoping it all goes away? You'd have to speak up for yourself sometimes. They're very quick to jump out to criticise the fans when we do go over the score, but they never seem ready to stick up and defend their name when we are wrongfully being criticised. No, like going back to all of it, there's no, we can't say, I've tried to, like what you've said, and not be coming across as moaning about it and stuff, because I do accept that if the season had went the way we had hoped it was to do, I think it's incredibly naive to think that there wouldn't have been some sort of seat gathering of supporters at some point. What I've argued in the last couple of days is, I don't, and you can actually back it up with evidence. You look at when we won the 9, and even just recently when we won the quadruple treble. Yes, there was gatherings, most specifically on the Celtic way, but they were in absolutely nothing compared to what we've seen over the course of the weekend. And also, it was not backed by Celtic. Celtic did not encourage it. So, and they didn't outright condemn it, but they didn't encourage us to do it either. And actually were very vocal about us not doing it in the lead up to it happening. I can tell you right now, if Celtic and the Celtic manager carried on the way that those players and Steven Gerrard carried on this weekend, the Daily Record would have pull-out sections on it. No Celtic manager would get away with anything like what Gerrard's been getting away with this. He stood up in the aftermath of that game on Sunday and says, "Oh, well, you've got to understand that, you know, this is a big relief, and you know that the joy." Sorry, that doesn't wash. And maybe I've been very biased here, not only as a Celtic supporter, but as an NHS employee, there's people at the moment that still can't attend their loved ones' funerals, and we're expected to just say, "Oh, no, it's okay," because a team have won a league, and I like to think that I would be just as, I mean, me and John go way back. John knows how outspoken I've been on our Dubai trip. The Dubai trip was a complete PR disaster, and it should never have happened. I still, even on the day when we flew out, I think it was the actual day of the game when we lost at Ibrox, and I remember saying to my dad, there's no way they'll be going to Dubai. And then obviously after the game, they were saying that was them jetting off. It was a terrible PR own goal, but as I say, there is little question now. There has been 4 or 5 major COVID breaches over the course of this season. Celtic have been involved in 2 of them, and I think we were rightly criticised for, especially I actually think the ball and goalie incident's actually worse than Dubai, because no matter what you think about the Dubai trip, there wasn't actually any. I'm being technical here. There wasn't actually any rule breaking. It was actually green rubber stamped by not only the Scottish footballing authorities, but by the government as well. And the one part of Neil's press conference that I did agree with was when he called out the hypocrisy of him and Scott Brown being criticised for being pictured poolside by the Scottish government. But then 2 months previous, when Scotland qualified for the Euros, everyone was celebrating the conga. So yeah, that is definitely where the hypocrisy part in it comes for me. With the current statements at Holyrood today, I was, I'm a keen follower of politics, and even I thought after Trump that there's nothing that can really leave me speechless or flabbergasted. I couldn't believe how light they got away with it in the Holyrood chamber the day. It actually took Patrick Harvey of the Greens to actually stand up at his point to question and actually say, no, let's call this out for what it is. It was complete and utter vandalism. And if anyone that sees any of the footage and some of the images that have came out since, that's not supporting your team winning a league championship. It was an excuse to, like you say, smash up Celtic shops, smash windows, attack statues. They clearly have changed their goal on statues. Last year it was all about protecting them. This season it was all about defecating on them. But yet for us to then be, and Nicola Sturgeon's criticism of that today, she, like you say, name-checked us twice. And I'm like, no, sorry, you can criticise us when we do go over when we breach regulations. I have absolutely no issue with that at all. But to try and pass us off as the other side of the same coin, it just reeks of political posturing, as far as I'm concerned. And I say that as someone who is a supporter not only of independence, but who would be considering most of the time to, certainly in recent years, to vote for the SNP. But it really is actually a lot, and I'm not the only one here, a lot of people that are similar-minded like me are actually now seeing the Greens as a more reasonable voice. They certainly don't have that kind of electoral might that the SNP do, but I think there's a lot of fans are just sick and tired of this complete double standards. Even the language used with the ball and goalie incident and the Dubai trip was nowhere. It was 10 times worse than this sort of slap on the wrist mentality that Rangers seem to have got away with. And I couldn't even believe, even worse, that Rangers have actually, I don't know if you guys have seen it, they've actually written to Glasgow City Council to complain that the benches weren't removed before the fans congregated. And I'm just like, I mean, Trump politics is well and truly alive in Scotland now. It's embarrassing. As I say, I know we're not whiter than white, so to speak. Celtic fans would have gathered on some level had we won the 10. There's no getting away for that. But it would certainly have not have been at the levels of what we've seen on Sunday. and it certainly wouldn't have been rubber stamped by the club. I mean, even when you look at the footage from after the game at Ibrox, the police allowed the security gate to be opened to allow the players to go out and celebrate with the fans. It's an absolute joke. I mean, listen, I'm all for fans and teams enjoying their wins. You know, we've done plenty of it, especially the last few years. But they're all supposed to be grown-ups. You know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and it was nothing short of an embarrassment, quite frankly. But the very tepid criticism coming out from the Scottish government and trying to sort of bring us into it, it was an absolute disgrace. And I think that, amongst other things that are probably well known about, it could very seriously backfire for the First Minister.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony, I'm glad you brought up some points there. You look at the footage that we've actually seen over the last couple of days. There was a police escort to Glasgow of them on the road. There was thousands of people in that police escort. During the pandemic, the police were just walking beside them. There was a video online of a police officer, a picture, taking a selfie with Rangers fans. And the SNP, the Scottish Government, as you rightly said, the Bowling goalie incident, I thought he was going to be charged with the death penalty the way it got on. Obviously, granted, it was terrible and he shouldn't have done it and he was rightly punished for it. But Aberdeen were punished for their COVID breaches. It seems to me that this season especially, Rangers have been untouchable when it comes to COVID, and there was players today, ironically charged, 5 players after they've won the league. One of them players, Nathan Patterson, played in the game for them in Europe just a few days back. And you look at Celtic coming back from Dubai, all our team had to self-isolate because of Chris Julian. And you're almost... John, is it double standards? What's your opinion?
Definitely. And I want to just first and foremost just say that I agree with every single point Anthony just made there. Yep. And it's, I mean, the double standards is right. Like you mentioned, ball and goalie incident we dealt with in-house, but we were lambasted for it. The Dubai trip, we were penalised heavily. 3 games postponed. We lost about 11 guys to self-isolation, which had a knock-on effect, and we were ridiculed by everybody, all the media, the government, for weeks prior to that, after that. And like you says, this year Rangers, I think earlier in the season, they had a couple of guys attend a party. There was rumour that all these players were present, but only a couple of the names were actually took to self-isolate. There was never any postponements. They done it again recently, like you said, the 5 guys. The names that we know all just so happen to be second string guys, none of them really first team players, so it wouldn't impact them too much. And again, nothing was done about it. These players then continued to play in games and put everything at risk. No self-isolation, no postponements, nothing like that. So I mean, it's evident that there's double standards, absolutely. And the way that Celtic was treated by the media, and I don't want to get into the way the media talk about the bias in the media, because we'll be here all night. But the Scottish government, you'd expect them to play an impartial role. Fair enough, we done things that we shouldn't have done. There was things put in place for it. There was the postponements. There was the self-isolation. You're in the middle of a pandemic. You breach those rules. Somebody was in contact who then contracted COVID. Fair enough. All right. But why is that then? It says Aberdeen penalised the same, but Rangers weren't they? And dragging their name into it with this league title nonsense. Like Anthony says, if we'd have won the 10, it would have been an absolute historic moment for the club. It's one that I believe that we all thought maybe we were going to win, and there certainly would have been an element of the fans who would have been out celebrating, but I don't believe it would have been to that extent. Like you says, there was the players celebrating with the fans. They condoned it. They were out cheering them on and everything else. There's the police escort taking them up to George Square. Then there's the mess and the carnage that they left. There was windows smashed, Celtic store was smashed, graffiti, stickers everywhere. Street was left in an absolute riot mess. Memorial benches broken. Like it was a disgrace, and the barely a word. I mean, they've come out and says it was bad, but again, they're dragging their name into it. They keep bringing us up when we were. That's not a day with us, and it's you got to ask yourself, well, why do you keep bringing us? Like, see if we're in the wrong, like Anthony says, then fine, we can hold our hands up. We'll accept any criticism that comes our way if we're in the wrong. But when it's somebody else, why are we getting dragged into it? It really baffles me. And another thing that baffled me as well is with the whole, I mean, I don't know how many people were estimated to be there, but looking at the pictures, there was tens of thousands anyway. I mean, they generally were all out in force. Granted, it is a small minority when you consider the population of Scotland, but in terms of Glasgow itself, that's a lot of people. And the comments that were made as well just seem to sort of paper over it and make it seem it wasn't as bad as it was. And it's the knock-on effect for that as well in terms of the whole lockdown thing. We're going to see it in a number of weeks, and it's going to have a negative impact on everybody who have been adhering to rules and everything else. And there shouldn't be any double standards. They shouldn't be allowed to get away with it, essentially. I also want to just touch on other comments that were made about the Old Firm game that's coming up. And I don't know, I'll get Anthony's and yours, Stephen, feelings on this as well. But they're talking about just cancelling the games altogether. There's been, I believe, numerous Rangers groups, fan forums, try to get thousands of fans again to get out en masse during lockdown and make their way to Celtic Park. We've seen already they've tied Union Jacks and Rangers scarves, around the statue of Billy McNeil. And they're obviously doing it to goad Celtic fans into a reaction. And obviously Celtic fans are annoyed at the thought of that happening, and want to go to Celtic Park to defend Celtic Way and the statues and everything else. Obviously that would be a cause for concern, because that's the kind of stuff that causes full-blown riots. And I think that's obviously a concern for the Scottish Government, which is fine. But what they should be doing is just telling, no necessarily, but just highlighting to everybody, look, don't bother showing up. Anybody that does show up is getting arrested, and deal with it that way. Don't blame the clubs for it, because it's not the club's fault, unless they're actively condoning it, which I don't think Celtic are. I don't know if Rangers are, at least publicly. And you need to start cracking down on the people that are actually attending these things. And if tens of thousands show up, then make sure the police presence is there to deal with it. And I'm hoping, and I think that a lot of Celtic groups as well have come out and says, don't turn up, stay away. If they're going to show up and they destroy things, they destroy statues, they can be replaced. We can foot the bill to the Rangers. So it's like, but don't show up, don't stoop to their level, don't tarnish the club's name the way that they're going to continue doing and have done. And I just feel, just going back to it just reeks of double standards. I don't know why. It does look like political posturing to me, but I don't think Nicola's doing herself any favours, because I think the majority of our supporters, not necessarily are Celtic fans, but I think Celtic fans are far more inclined to be supporters of the SNP, because we know that the Rangers side, the majority of them are loyalists. They believe the Unionists, and their feelings on the SNP and Nicola aren't great. And where she might feel that, I mean, we know there's an election coming up, so you got to wonder if that's playing a part in it. But is that why she's been so lenient in terms of? Well, I mean, she still, as the First Minister, still has to come out and say something. But is that why they haven't cracked down on name as hard? But I mean, they would hang Nicola out to dry, and any member of the SNP out to dry at any given chance. And regardless of what they do or say, they're not going to be voting SNP because it's just instilled in them. They don't. It's not. I'm not even going to get into that actually, but I think no, because I mean we could upset a few people. But I mean, just going back to your original question, I kind of dragged that out a wee bit. But just going back to your original question, Stephen, I think it is double standards, and I'm just.
I mean, just while we're actually recording this, John, Celtic Football Club have released a tweet following quoting the tweet. It says, "Celtic Football Club statement. Simple and short here. We're not half of anything. Not our problem. Hashtag one club since 1888. Finally, Celtic have actually come out of the woodwork, sent a statement out. Well, not a statement, more of a quote kind of thing. And hopefully this is a start of Celtic Football Club actually backing the fans and maybe making a few changes, because I have to say that their tweet's brilliant. I'm actually reading the reaction to it right now.
I'm quite impressed with that. I think it's the first thing from Celtic's media, in-house media, this entire season that I'm quite impressed with. I think it so few words, but it speaks volumes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's finally Celtic coming out and backing the fans, where they're in a corner and they finally come out swinging, and that's all we want. That's all we want as fans, is the club to back us like we back them. And as you said, Anthony, the tweet itself is a statement and a half. It's quite punching when you see it. It just basically backs up the firm belief that Rangers are a new club and it's their first ever title. And moving on from the side of things in terms of double standards, it brings me on nicely to our next point. I'll go to you, Anthony, first. Do you think we should be giving Sevco, Newco, the Rangers PLC a guard of honour at Celtic Park?
In absolutely no way or shape or form should the bootleg Rangers be allowed a guard of honour coming into Celtic Park next week. I'll be honest, not even just guard of honours, Stephen. I can't be bothered with pretty much all of these sort of empty gestures. I support the message of the taking of the knee, but unfortunately nothing's been done since. There's not been any change brought with it. So any pre-match handshakes, guards of honour, I'm not even daft on national anthems at international games, to be honest. I'm pretty old school. Just get on with the game. 2 years ago, this exact same situation happened on the other foot. Rangers refused to do it, and Neil Lennon got asked about it, and he says they've clearly broke the tradition. So as far as I'm concerned, that's it. Tradition is broke. There is no we are under no we're not entitled to give them anything. And a guard of honour also is a show of respect as well. And I'm given the scenes of the last few days, I'm in no mood to show them any respect. I say, get on with the game, and for the first minute, actually show a bit of fight for the first time this season, and put them back in their box.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly put, Anthony. And what about yourself, John? Where do you fall in this guard of honour argument, so to speak?
Yeah, exact same. No way, no happening. I hope it doesn't. I really hope it doesn't.
But there's a lot of people putting up. There's a lot of people putting up the argument, as you said, for our fans not to stoop to their level and meet them at Celtic Park. Just let them do what they want and they can foot the bill, because if anything is going to come back in them, well, we hope it will come back in them, because what we've seen over the last couple of days is nothing short of a shambles in terms of media and the government coverage of it, especially where I'm from. And over there too, it just seems to be brushed under the carpet like a lot of things are to do with Rangers anyway. But in terms of the guard of honour, I've heard arguments on both sides, and they both make good points. There's pros and cons. If we do it, it shows we're the bigger club. But as you said, Anthony, it kind of shows there's respect there, which there shouldn't be, especially the way they've handled themselves and conducted themselves throughout the years. Going back to when they were cheating, signing players and winning titles illegally. I covered that in the Celtic Rewind special, if anyone wants to have a listen to that. But it just speaks of, as you said, I personally don't believe they should do it. I know a few people close to me that are saying, yes, do it, just show we're the bigger team. But I think sometimes you should fight fire with fire. I know that's an old-fashioned saying, but there comes a point, and hopefully tonight's the start of it, where the club should be like, no, what? Don't care about them across the city. Let them do what they want. We'll play the game, hopefully get a result, and move on to next season, and hopefully claim back what's rightfully ours. Because at the moment, I know it's hurting that we've lost the 10, but just think of it as I put up that picture the other day, the league titles we've won since 2001. I think they've only won 5. which is the old club, but they claim to be the same club. So not getting into that argument with today, boys, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely.
But
well,
yeah,
it's like the old saying, Stephen, if you wreck a park bench in George Square, but you pay for a new one, is it the same bench? I don't know. I'm just sort of taking their, outlook on life there for a moment. But then, just even like you said, the optics of it. If you imagine if they do what they're threatening to do, wreck the Celtic way and defecate on Billy McNeil's statue and whatever, and then we go and applaud them onto the park, it's an absolute nonsense. Hashtag get on with the game.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to end the segment in terms of the podcast. But what we're going to do, we're going to move straight on to the fun part of the podcast, the quiz, which, John, you've lost twice in a row. But yeah, you claimed that you answered at the same time as Ross. But
I think if you listen to it back, Stephen, I was absolutely correct. You can hear me mention, and possibly, and no disrespect, Ross, when you listen, but I did get Sevilla off first. And you can hear me answering the exact same time as him. So this is an issue with your audio at your end, Stephen. But I'll take it. I'm not going to be better.
Well, there's no lineup predictions or score predictions until next week, until the Old Firm or the Derby game, as Anthony rightly alluded to. So we'll crack on with the quiz. It's the same thing. There's 5 questions. First, if they get the 3 or 5, whatever wins, and we'll see who takes the title this week. Are you ready?
Yeah, go for it.
No worries. In which season did Celtic first compete in the Champions League group stage?
Season 2001, 2002.
Yeah, 1-0 to Anthony. Where were you, John? You whispering again?
No, I didn't. Yeah, I was thinking. I couldn't get the answer.
Which was the only trophy Celtic won in the year 2000?
The League Cup.
Oh, what was that? Anthony, what was your answer?
The League Cup, I'm saying, as in what was then the CIS Insurance Cup.
Okay, and what was your answer, John?
I just said the Scottish Cup.
You're wrong. It was the League Cup.
All I remember because my brother got lifted after the game. That's how I remember it. Well, he got a stern talking to, at least. A stern talking to. I don't think he got lifted. He got a stern talking to for drinking wine on the street.
We shout out to Kev.
That's our Kev, mate, aye.
Who was Celtic's first ever manager?
Willie Maley.
Anthony takes the title this week. Fuck me, John. Where are you?
He's too quick, man. He's too quick. Boy's an encyclopedia.
So the quizzes we were doing in the first lockdown.
Aye,
So Anthony, you take the title this week for the quiz.
Please, it for me. I'm not taking part in the next one.
You're going to be known. You're going to be known as the free head of the group, John. You need to get your act together here.
I'm really good at being put on the spot with quizzes, mate. I go blank all the time.
In terms of your prize, Anthony, it's the same as the other guests. It's absolutely nothing. It's pride you win. So
I'll take that, mate. I'll take it.
I hope that's enough for you. But guys, again, thanks very much for joining me. To you, John, again, I'll give a big shout out to yourself. You sorted the YouTube and Spotify out. And without you, I don't think we could get on YouTube or Spotify, to be honest. I don't know how to do it. So thanks very much for that, John. And you're going to be on again because you're my regular co-host. And Anthony, yourself, thanks for coming on again as a guest. You'll be welcome on anytime you want. It's brilliant to have you. It was a fantastic conversation with yourself today. Some interesting points. Have you enjoyed your time today?
Oh, thank you. Absolutely, mate. And I'll more than happy to come on any time. Be looking forward to it. It's obviously the 2 times I've been on, we've not been able to speak about the happiest of subjects, but it's just great talking about Celtic, isn't it? That's
absolutely. But the days are not. The days will be back soon, don't they? They're coming back, Anthony.
So this is merely a small glitch in the matrix.
That's it.
Well, the reason, as I said at the start, the reason for this podcast is just for Celtic fans to vent their frustrations, to talk it out and give their opinions, because I think that's been lost, especially with the board this year. So I hope we're providing people with that platform, and I hope people are enjoying it. And until Friday, I think, Friday is our next podcast, we will speak again. But in the meantime, to everyone who's watching, listening, and following all our pages, thank you very much.
Stephen,
yeah?
Sorry, just before, you mentioned last week you had an announcement to make regarding Friday. What's happening?
Oh, well, on Friday, thanks for reminding me there. Went a bit like your quiz. I went a bit like your quiz head. I went blank. But
We're waiting for the reveal.
So on Friday we're going to welcome Russell Boyce, which is fantastic for the show. He's on the ASCON bulletin, so a Celtic State of Mind bulletin. He does a Monday with Kevin Graham, and he's delighted to be joined by him on the show. I think he's going to bring some fantastic points and knowledge regarding Celtic and the current situation. So I'm looking forward to that. And also tomorrow we have a special guest, but I'm not going to announce that just yet. I'm going to leave that for Instagram because it's not going to be released possibly until next week. But keep tuned, everybody, and in the meantime, stay well and keep safe. Hail, hail.